How do I stop worrying about my health issues? This is such a good question. And I struggle with this a lot. All of my reasoning tends to go out the window when I'm worried about a symptom. I find that oftentimes when we are anxious, when we're tired, when our body doesn't feel well, it's easy for our anxiety to attach to that. First step is really try not to Google. I would say typically what I do in this situation, and this happens for me a lot, is I will stop, I will pause, say hey to my body, like, what do you need right now? You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week, I'm going to do part 2 of the Q&A series that we started last week. So I have some questions that you guys submitted. Again, thank you always for submitting the questions. Again, if you have any questions after this episode, please do not hesitate to message us. You can email us at info@drerinkinney.com. You can DM me on Instagram at Dr. Kinney, and we love hearing from you. So, all right. Well, that's some good ones. You guys are sending some good questions lately. Some of these they're going to take a little while to answer. All right. We're going to start with kind of an easier one. This one is, do I really need to take a multivitamin every day? So great question. And this is something that my patients ask all the time. Hey, I'm not taking a multi. Is this something I really should be doing? Or I'm taking a multi. I don't really know if it's doing anything. What should I do? So I have a few things to say about this. Ideally, if you are eating a really, really healthy diet, you shouldn't necessarily need to take a multivitamin every day, right? We should get all of these nutrients from our food, from a healthy, rounded diet. Now, in today's world, most of us don't always get all of the nutrients that we need in our diet. And that might be because, some days we're just not on top of our game. It also is because a lot of the foods that we eat don't contain as many nutrients as they used to because of the way our soil is. So if you eat a healthy diet, I think you can definitely get away without taking a multivitamin. But here's what I see in a lot of my patients, especially the ones that are having chronic health issues, particularly that are related to chronic stress. It's definitely not going to hurt you to take a multivitamin. And if you don't want to take something daily, I will recommend to people, hey, take it 3 to 4 times a week, right? You don't have to take it every day. There are some patients, like if you're struggling with long haul COVID, if you're struggling with chronic fatigue, if we're really working on trying to get your cellular energy or your mitochondria to make more ATP, I'm 100% going to tell you should take a multivitamin, a super high powered multivitamin on a daily basis. Once we kind of get you into like a maintenance phase, you're feeling pretty good, I typically drop people down to, hey, take your multi a few times a week or take it every day, but maybe don't take it if you travel and that stresses you out. Or, we're a little bit less stringent on the taking of it daily. But here's what else I want to say about a multivitamin. Not all multivitamins are created equally. I'm bringing a great guest on it'll probably come out in a few weeks. We're going to dive deep into all about how to look for what to look for in a really good supplement and how to kind of differentiate, because that's a really important topic. So we'll do a deep dive on that in a few weeks. But again, not all supplements are created the same. The couple of things that I like to tell people to look for is, one, look at the other ingredients in your supplements first. You want to look at what they're using for fillers, what kind of coloring. And I usually tell people, I'm like, look for a supplement that has less than 5 of those other ingredients, and look for a supplement that doesn't have long, complicated, lengthy chemical names that you don't know what they are. Chances are you probably don't want to put those in your body. And the more fillers or more other ingredients in a supplement, the harder it is for your body to absorb what the actual good things in the supplement are. So we want to make sure that whatever you're taking is going to get absorbed easily. I really like, for a multivitamin, I like looking for ones that are in a capsule where the only other ingredient is vegetable capsule. So then that vegetable capsule is going to dissolve and you're going to easily absorb all those nutrients that you want to be absorbing. When they're in a tablet form, they typically have to use a lot of fillers and other things to keep it in that tablet. And it's just a little bit harder for your body to absorb that. When I was in med school, I had a plumber come to my house for some random reason, and we were talking about what I was in school for. And he was like, oh, it's so funny. We're talking about vitamins. And he's like, Miss Erin, the number one thing I see that clogs elderly toilets are clumps of Centrum vitamins. And he could see the actual, he could see that it was a vitamin. It didn't even it basically passed through them. They didn't absorb any of it, and it was clogging up their toilets. So, which kind of goes to show, some vitamins, typically the ones that are slightly less expensive, they're going to put a lot of filler stuff in there and your body's not even going to be able to get the benefit of what you were trying to pay for. So look for a supplement, again, that's in a capsule form that's going to be more easy for your body to absorb. And then don't miss the episode that's going to come out in a few weeks where I'm going to dive deep on how to really figure out which multi is the best one. Because there are a lot out there, but if you kind of follow this basic guidelines, that can be really helpful. So answer that question is, do you really need to? Not necessarily, but you might want to. And that will depend on kind of where you are and what your goals are. And always best to talk to your provider about what's going to be best for your health situation. Okay. Next question is, how do I stop worrying about my health issues? This is such a good question. And for the person who answered or asked this question, I did a whole episode on health anxiety. So definitely go back and look for that one and check that out. But this is a really tough one. And I struggle with this a lot. I shared a lot about that in that episode. I am a huge hypochondriac, I just always find it so funny because this is what I do all day. I'm constantly worried about my body. I like one little symptom and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is happening, XYZ, what should I do? And I'm Googling stuff, even though I'm a doctor, guys. I know most of this stuff, but all of my reasoning tends to go out the window when I'm worried about a symptom. But so I'm going to share the answer. The answer is go listen to that episode. But also, I find that oftentimes when we are anxious, when we're tired, when our body doesn't feel well, it's easy for our anxiety to attach to that, particularly when you don't feel well. You'll start worrying, you start spinning, you start Googling. First step is really try not to Google. I would say typically what I do in this situation, and this happens for me a lot, is I will stop. I will pause and I will say, hey, to my body, like, what do you need right now? Do you need rest? Because oftentimes when our body expresses a symptom, it is trying to tell us something. It is trying to be like, hey, let's take a headache, for example. When you get a headache, and a headache could be associated with any number of conditions. It could be, headaches for me always triggers because I had really bad headaches when I had Lyme disease. So whenever I get a headache, I'm like, oh gosh, is my Lyme back? Is this happening? Is this happening? But oftentimes when you have a headache, you could be dehydrated. You could be tired. You could be overstimulated. You could be hungry. So there's, you could, most of the time, and I've learned this about my body, when I have a headache towards the end of the day, I need rest. I need rest and I need quiet. I've been overstimulated and my body is asking me to go lie down. So I think the number one message here is when you're feeling anxious about a symptom or about something going on with your health is to take a pause, take a deep breath, and to maybe go lay down and ask yourself, hey, what is my body needing right now? What can I give to myself to calm this fear down? And number two, try your best not to Google, right? Because Google's going to tell you, you're going to be able to find whatever you want on Google when it comes to you can Google, does my headache mean I have cancer? You're probably going to get some version of a yes. You could also Google, does my headache rule out cancer? And you might get a yes there too. So you have to be careful what you Google and what you look for on the internet. So be careful there, particularly if you're already in a worked up state. And the last thing I'm going to say here is this is where it can be so helpful to be working with a provider that you trust and that has your back. Because in a really good working, relationship with a provider, you should be able to reach out to them and say, hey, I'm feeling really worried. I have XYZ. Can you talk this through? Can you help me calm my fear that I'm going to have XYZ happen in the future? And, and I really try to do that for my patients. I tell them when we first start working together, hey, listen, I don't want you to spin out of control and be worried about something. Please, if you have questions, reach out so we can talk about this and calm your fears. So I think really what needs to happen if you're worrying about health issues is you need to kind of put some of these into practice and start using this as almost like a support system. So, take a breather, take a deep breath, ask your body what it needs from you. And oftentimes, I cannot tell you how many times your body is literally just asking for a rest, or it might be asking you to feed it or for you to drink water, or something simple. And if you ask and you get quiet, typically your body's going to give you an answer. And this can take practice. So you have to keep doing it so you get, used to understanding what your body's asking of you when it sends you a symptom or a signal. And then try not to Google. And finally, reach out to your trusted provider and see, how they can help you kind of move through this anxiety and fear. Great question. And like I said, please go back and listen to the episode I did on health anxiety because I talked about this in a lot more detail. Okay. Next question is, what are your favorite travel supplements to keep you on track? That is a great question and perfect for summer because people are on the go and moving and traveling around. And So this may depend on, what you have going on, but oftentimes the things that I see people struggle with when they're traveling is sleeping in a new environment, is having regular bowel movements. Sometimes when we get in a new environment, our bowels don't quite cooperate. This can also be true if you're traveling through time zones. Your body might get a little bit out of schedule, a little bit out of whack. And then sometimes stress, right? Stress, even if we're traveling for fun or vacation, there's lots of stuff on the go. You're not in your normal environment. It can be good stress, but stress to the body. So I would tell you the things that I love to travel with and that I often recommend my patients travel with. One is magnesium. I don't go anywhere without magnesium. So I usually take it in a pill form when I travel and, take a couple of magnesiums before bed. It's great to take before a plane ride because it can help kind of like calm the muscles down. It's good for tension headaches, good for, tight muscles. And you can also use magnesium. You can vary the dose if you do tend to get constipated when you travel. So you can up the dose of your magnesium before you go to bed when you're in a travel situation to help kind of move the bowels the next day. So it's a great kind of helps with a lot of things. So again, magnesium is a great thing to take with you when you travel. Number 2 is a probiotic. I definitely, and particularly if you're someone with GI issues or struggle with, one way or the other when you travel, is take a good probiotic and take one that doesn't have to be refrigerated. They don't have to worry about that. So I'm a big fan of, and I talked about this last week when we were talking about the post antibiotic protocols. I really like a spore biotic. So Orthomolecular makes a great one called Orthospore IG. Microbiome Labs makes another great one called Megaspore Biotic. But a type of a spore probiotic is a great thing to take when you're traveling, again, to kind of keep those bowels more regular. And then the third thing that I typically don't travel without is some sort of adrenal support. I typically travel with my Adrenal Assist product. I am affiliated with that one. It's my own product. It's fantastic. It has a little bit of an immune support in there, has some adrenal support, has some vitamin C. So I like that you can take it. It'll give you a little bump in energy. You can use it to help recalibrate your circadian rhythm if you are traveling through time zones. So you will take this when you first wake up or when you want to be awake. And that will help kind of get your body to realize that cortisol needs to be high in the morning. And then you can use your magnesium at night to kind of help calm you down. So this will help with energy. And I love if you're traveling on planes and you're worried about getting sick, this Adrenal Assist has a great immune boosting protocol in there. So it's going to help keep your immune system healthy, which is always important when we travel, right? We worry about, we're run down, we're, getting exposed to a bunch of things and we don't want to come home from a vacation feeling more exhausted because we were sick on vacation. So great to take. And, you can take any adrenal support. You could also bring in immune support. I love Adrenal Assist because it kind of combines both of those guys in there. So less bottles to pack or less pills to pack. And then finally, this is really important if you are traveling time zones, but even if you're not traveling time zones, I love to travel with a little bit of melatonin. I typically recommend taking anywhere from 1 to 5 milligrams. You might want to play around with this before you travel so you can see how you respond to it. But taking, again, between 1 and 5 milligrams of melatonin before, about an hour before you want to be asleep, or you can use this again to get on time zone to recalibrate circadian rhythms, and or you can just use it to help you fall asleep if you're in an unknown place. So, okay, magnesium, probiotic, adrenal support and or immune support, and melatonin. I also will typically recommend to my patients who are nervous flyers, who get anxiety about travel. I love, it's a North American Pharmacal, which is Peter D'Adamo's supplement line. It's called Tranquility Base. It is a fantastic product. It has a little bit of GABA. It has some passiflora. It has some chamomile. It's a really nice way to just turn the brain down a little bit, turn the anxiety down a little bit, and it kind of chills the body out. And it's super safe. You can also take it with, if you take a small prescription when you fly, like an Ativan or some sort of benzodiazepine, you can take the Tranquility Base with that to make it so you have to take less of your prescription, or you can take that first, and then maybe you might not need to take your prescription if you don't want to. I see this a lot with my patients. They're like, oh, I get so anxious when I fly. I have this Ativan or this whatever prescription, but I don't love taking it because then I'm kind of out of it. And then the next day I feel out of it. So I really love a Tranquility Base or something like it. So you can look for a GABA blend or, they call these Nervine. So a Nervine blend, which is kind of, again, it's just going to tone down the nervous system and calm you down a little bit. So the body isn't as anxious and the mind isn't as anxious. And again, you can use that first. And then if you're still feeling anxious, then you could go for your medication. So this is a nice one to take. You can also take it before sleep. If you could take that with the melatonin. That's a really nice blend. And so if you have all those things covered, typically you'll be pretty supported when you travel. And I have some patients where they're on like pretty intense protocols and they'll call and they're like, hey, I've got this, 10-day trip to Europe. Should I take all the things? And usually what I'll end up paring them down to is what I just said, like, the magnesium, adrenal support, probiotic, maybe an immune support, maybe it's mixed in with the adrenal support, melatonin, and, a nerve iron, like the tranquility base. And that usually is a really good kind of baseline travel support there. So great question. All right. Next question is this one will be fun, is what are your thoughts on Ozempic? All right, guys, I have a lot of thoughts on Ozempic. And my first thought, or my first thing that I'm going to say is, if you're thinking about Ozempic, please talk to your provider about it and make sure that it is the right choice for you. And when I say Ozempic, I mean any of the semaglutides, right? It's a really hot topic right now, and they can be extremely effective for weight loss, but sometimes that can come with a price. Sometimes it can be a good thing. Sometimes it might not be the best thing. I have had patients that, were in the place where a semaglutide was exactly what they needed. They were, needed to lose 25 to 30 pounds. They were having some blood sugar difficulties, tons of food noise, and, they've used a semaglutide and it has been life-changing for them. The food noise has come down. They've lost the weight. They're feeling really fantastic. And that's great. I've also had patients that are, only want to lose 5 or 10 pounds and have used it and have been okay on it. So it really is a case-dependent thing. And what I will say is, and this is true for anything, any weight loss protocol, is you want to make sure that if you're going to ask your body to lose weight this drastically, that everything else is in a good place, right? So you don't want to be super tired. You want to make sure there's no thyroid issues. Your hormones are in a good place. You're not fighting any sort of infection, because if you use Ozempic, it's going to force the body typically to lose some weight. But let's say that the body is like, I have a patient that did use Ozempic and listen, I get it. I'm a woman. We all want to have our bodies look the way we want to have our bodies, right? And sometimes we want it to happen fast. And here's this great drug out here that's like, oh, you can achieve these results really quickly. But I've had some patients that were, dealing with a chronic viral infections or had just had a really bad COVID infection and, have been feeling really run down and tired and were feeling really frustrated with their weight, which again, totally understandable, but they kind of use it at the wrong time. And I think if you use Ozempic at the right time in the right place and you make the appropriate lifestyle changes with it, it can be a really great tool. But you have to remember that it is a tool that needs to be used in conjunction with other changes. And the great thing about a semaglutide is it does calm food noise down. So it can be really helpful if you've been struggling to make lifestyle changes or dietary changes, because you're not craving as many things. It's easier to eat healthy on it. So if you look at it as a tool, and this is where I've kind of talked to my patients about it. I'm like, hey, if we're in the right place with your, on your healing journey, we've kind of worked through all the other things. Your body's in a place where it is ready and able to remove fat cells. You guys know I've talked, I talk about that house analogy. There's no invaders coming in. Like, you're not super stressed. No one's coming over for every meal of every day. The body is like in a state where it's like, okay, I can really go and clean out this basement closet. But it's hard for you to make some of the dietary, again, lifestyle changes. Ozempic can be a great tool to help you make those changes. Now, again, if you use Ozempic during the wrong time on your healing journey, that's when I tend to see that it's probably going to cause more problems than you want. So, in the example of someone who's like struggling with like a really bad, like long haul COVID situation or a really bad Epstein-Barr reactivation, and their system is really, really fatigued and they're having joint pain, they're having all these other things. They also maybe are really struggling with weight. Weight, it's really annoying, but weight tends to be the last thing on our body's to-do list. So we want to help the body do the other things first. And then when we've kind of moved through that stuff, sometimes when we move through that stuff, the body loses weight a lot easier. And this is what I find a lot of people really struggle is they're putting all their energy into weight loss when their body's like, wait, I really need to do these other things first. I will lose weight for you, but I'm not quite ready to do that. And again, this is really hard because, we all want to look and feel good, right? And sometimes part of feeling good is we want to look in the mirror and like what we see. So, I do understand that these things can go hand in hand, but my answer to, kind of what are my overall thoughts on Ozempic is it can be a good tool when it's used appropriately at the right point in your healing journey. And so I think that, to figure out if it's right for you, going to have back on my main message, is make sure you're working with a provider that kind of knows where you are, that, and you might not have to have that provider. We don't do semaglutide in our clinic, just not something we do, but we work with patients to kind of, we'll work with them, whoever they're getting the semaglutide from. And, and usually my patients will be like, hey, okay, right now maybe isn't the best time. We're going to finish out whatever it was we were working on with the body. Once we get through there, then we're going to enter into this phase where we can use that as a tool. And, with any weight loss protocol where you lose weight pretty quickly, we do have to remember that losing weight at a fast clip is hard on the body. It's, it takes energy. It's a lot of work for the body to go in there and remove their fat cells. I just moved last week and it was so funny. I was so living into my house analogy, because I was like, oh, this is such a good analogy. I was, pulling everything out of every room, and then there was all this junk. And it's just like when you're detoxing, your body's dumping all this extra stuff. And then you got to go and still clean it out. And it's exhausting. So if you've ever moved or you've ever cleaned out a closet, think back to that. And that's what your body's doing when it's removing fat cells and getting rid of them, right? So when you are on, if you're using Ozempic or any other, if you're doing a diet of any kind with the weight loss as your goal, remember that your body's working really hard for you. So, again, we want to make sure that your body has that energy and is capable to do that when you choose to do it. So those are my thoughts on Ozempic. And I'm sure I'm going to get some follow-up questions for you guys about this. There are definitely cases where I say to people, I'm like, I don't think this is the right medication for you. And if you've got complicated or GI issues, it might not be the best for you. If you've had SIBO, or if you struggle with constipation, this, Ozempic, again, it's something that could be used, but it might not be our first choice. Or we need to make sure we're definitely through that phase before we can move on to that. So great question. And again, I know there's so much out there about this right now. And it's like everyone and their mother is like, oh, I'm on it, I'm feeling great, blah, blah, blah. And, again, I think when it's used appropriately, it can be a good tool. There is also the coming off of it, which sometimes people struggle with, because, with any diet where you lose weight quickly, the body, if it was too quick for the body when you stop, the body might, swing back the other way and put on a few pounds. So, this is where the lifestyle change and making sure that you've made changes that you are able to keep up with, even when you're not using a medication like a semaglutide, that's when you will see the changes stick, or the weight loss stick. So fantastic questions, guys, and keep them coming. I love answering questions. I love hearing from you guys. So please reach out with more questions. I plan to do a couple of more of these in the fall, and look out for some more fun episodes over the next coming weeks. Hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.